Just in case number 7 of the tribes get out, this is the revised version of number 7 of the tribes. Now we're moving along, I think, at a decent clip. I'm kind of behind where I thought I wanted to be actually by this time, this being February. No, I think we're okay. I'm hoping by March, end of March, we'll be through Deuteronomy, which means we'll have completed the Torah. And that can be packaged as just the Torah, and then we can move on to the next portion of our biblical studies. I hope this study, if anyone is actually going through it through it at least one section at a time or one book at a time or whatever, I'm hoping it's helpful. The goal is just to turn this archaic language into the year 2024's language with a breakdown of some of the material in a way where we can relate it to today's culture. I think the mistake that's being made by a lot of religious leaders today is they're thinking that the Old Testament is antiquated and not necessary to understand. And the way I explain it is, in fact, the statement I've heard for 20 years is the Old Testament is the New Testament concealed, and the New Testament is the Old Testament revealed. And the general thought pattern that I keep hearing, or the way I hear it from people that talk, is since Jesus is Lord and Savior, don't need the Old Testament. So you have a bunch of people considered experts who laid very little attention on understanding the basis of the rabbi's study, which is the Torah, the Old Testament, some of the romantic books, like Proverbs and Job and whatever. Some of the prophets, what they call major and minor prophets, understanding the mindset behind the material. Nothing is new under the sun. So this isn't something that is old in relationship to how truth works. The spirit of truth is bound up in all these different aspects that we're breaking down. Aspects. The different. I look at the Old Testament as a prism, and it all depends on how you look at it, at what time you look at it. There is a lot of information in the Old Testament that is relatable to your life today. I'm looking at it today from the standpoint of leadership, and because I'm called to leadership. My discipline is organizational leadership. It's my bent. Some people will call it different things. But putting things in order is kind of my thing. It's my profession as a business consultant. I was an executive pastor. I liked pulling out the big board and organizing the pieces and holding all the pieces responsible for the passion they say they had for their particular ministries, and then making sure that they don't focus so much on the ministry, but they focus in on mentoring the people who are to go into that ministry with them. I depended upon a person that says, for example, I'm called to the music ministry, and I believe I'm the leader of the music ministry, before I can recognize somebody who is a member of the music ministry, I would trust my leader of the music ministry to be able, if they had the talent, to be able to recognize who had the talent to increase and multiply the music ministry. So it's always about the souls, not necessarily just about the ministry or the service itself. I heard one pastor say, listen, if you're the leader, it just comes to you. You know, the question is, who are you leading? Who are you leading? Let me throw this in there too, because this is very important. We're talking about the tribes. And this is all relative to what we're going to have this conversation about right here. When you are a leader, you understand that you're not the boss. You're just the leader. There's only one boss. The boss is the one who sets the standard. You can never be the boss. You can never be the Lord, because they're not your standards. You didn't set the standards. You can only be a leader. I was having a meeting with some of my partners a few days ago, and maybe I sat at the head of the table, but only because that was the first place that I walked to. I could have been sitting anywhere at that table because I'm a leader of leaders. A leader understands that he's just the leader of leaders, and he can be a member of leaders. This is new thinking to most of you. I understand that. But when you come together as leaders, there is no competition. That is a European thing taught in our schools to keep us divided. Leaders do not compete with leaders. Leaders collaborate with leaders. A leader is a collaborator, not a boss. It is not a top-down method. There is no top-down, I tell you what to do. When you're a leader of leaders, you're pretty much the head listener. Maybe you can be a mediator. A leader understands that in your collaboration with other leaders, there can be no room for egos. Not with that group. Because that group is the one that gives you power. The power you have is a collaborative power when you're going after something outside of your sphere of influence. Because you're backed not just by yourself, but you're backed by other leaders. Your leadership has less power around a diverse group if your leadership is only backed by one type of power. I hope you're writing all this down, or at least this is important. So in other words, if all of you are accountants, that only gives you so much power. But if you have accountants, business managers, real estate investors, insurance professionals, investment professionals, all coming together in one sphere, you have a lot more power. You have a lot more influence. You have a lot more authority. Especially if you throw in political power, religious power, what have you. So, the diversity of your leadership, and when I say leadership, I'm not talking about just you, Mr. or Mrs. Ego. I'm talking about you and your team. Keep in mind, just so you understand, and let me reiterate this. This is for my grandchildren, my brothers and sisters in Kenya, and for those who are blessed by this information, God bless you. Also, so you're aware, and let me state this every once in a while in my videos, since these will live beyond me, I am called to leadership. I'm not called to the new babe in Christ. I'm not trying to prove to you that Jesus is Lord. I don't think I need to. Especially if I'm talking to you. Most of you, some of you maybe, are religious leadership. But my goal is not just to talk to religious leadership. My goal is to talk to business leaders, those who are interested in the spirit of truth, religious leaders, social leaders. My goal is to have an impact with leadership. These principles are for leadership. Let me say it one more time. For leadership. My demographic is not your demographic in most cases. So if you're listening to me and you're looking at it from your own perspective, you've already lost. Because one of the principles of leadership is getting beyond yourself and listening to it from a perspective other than yours. It is the process that God calls the renewing of the mind, which we just talked about the last couple of 2 videos. If you can't look at this information coming straight from heaven and see it from beyond your little religious eyes, then I can't help you. But if you can look at this information and see how it relates to building something exceptional, you're in the right place. We're going from Genesis to Revelations. We're going to see how the people were delivered from Egypt, which at a certain point was a place where they had accomplished freedom, when it was Jacob going in because his son had prepared a way for him. Please listen to that. Second youngest son, who went through hell, thrown in pits, falsely accused, kept his attitude right, built relationships, a couple different times. Went back to prison, came back out, served as governor of Egypt behind the Pharaoh. Brought his family in and had 2 children, Egyptian children, because he married a princess of Egypt. All you racist folks. All you, it's all about me. You know, no, listen. These 2 children were still members of the 12 tribes of Israel. In fact, were adopted in at son level. But some of you may call mixed breed. See, we get this crazy way of looking at society as though it's all linear. It is not. Joseph was the one that brought them in, and for 400 years they lived, well, not for the whole 400 years, but for a long period of time. Even after Joseph and Jacob had passed on, he left a legacy for his children and his children's children. But it became laborious because the next Pharaoh or 2, I forget how many pharaohs there were, did not recognize them other than as slaves. They had become slaves. Moses, being born within the Levitical tribe, his mother, pushed down a river because they were trying to kill the kids, pushed down the river, picked up by I think his sister, brought into the palace, raised 40 years old, decides he's going to kill somebody because he knows his roots. Says, who are you to do that? Don't do that. And then he ran away, went to the priest of Midian. Not the priest of Christianity. Priest of Midian, I believe was Ethiopia, married a beautiful dark-skinned sister, trained up by her father, worked as a shepherd, and at 83 years old, when it's time to retire, he decides he's going to go back to Egypt and deliver the people because he believes God told him to. He saw a burning bush. Got his brother, who's about 80 years old, and his sister, don't know how old Miriam was. And they decide they're going to go to Egypt and call the people out. Pharaoh looked at him like he was cray-cray. So he went to the 12 tribes and said, listen, my name is Moses, and this is what I need your help for. He went to the leadership. Numbers chapter 7. Verse 1, and it came to pass on the day that Moses had... This is, by the way, this is after they already left. They're gone. He spent all of Leviticus teaching them the law. Took a year. Now it's time to institute in the book of Numbers what he had taught them from Exodus to Leviticus, and it's time to get busy. Numbers chapter 7, verse 1, and it came to pass on the day that Moses had fully set up the tabernacle and had anointed it and sanctified it and all the instruments thereof, both the altar. Remember in the previous videos, they had decided that the temple, the tabernacle of the congregation, the tabernacle of the congregation, would be the centerpiece of all the tribes. The Levitical priesthood would encamp around all sides of it. And the 12 tribes would account, there would be 3 tribes on each side. So he organized it. They had it all figured out. And now it came to pass on the day that Moses had fully set up the tabernacle, had anointed it, sanctified it, all the instruments thereof, both the altar and the vessels thereof, and had anointed them and sanctified them, that the princes of Israel, heads of the house of their fathers, who princes of the tribes, and were over them that were numbered, offered, and they brought their offering before the Lord, 6 covered wagons and 12 oxen, a wagon for 2 of the princes, and for each one an ox, and they brought them before the tabernacle. So if you can imagine, everyone came from their areas to the center, and they brought 6 wagons, which means 2 priests were on the wagons, and they had 2 ox. So do you think they were walking with the wagon and 2 ox? No. You had 2 princes in a wagon being pulled by 2 ox. Study to show yourself approved. This is a picture of unity. This is a picture of collaboration. I think it's important to understand that each tribe also represents different disciplines. The most powerful tribe, the most powerful team of people you can get is a team of people who are masters at every discipline you need to accomplish whatever goal it is that you're looking to accomplish. You have to have consensus on the overall goal. In this case, is building the kingdom of heaven in Canaan, in a territory. The tabernacle was a starting place. Practice. Egypt was a starting place. Practice. The lion, the tiger, the bear. The giant. We got to get to a place where we understand that this is not about you, it's not about me. If we're all interested in building the kingdom of heaven, then it ain't about the race to wealth. It's about the race to relationships. I'm glad I did the revised version. The other one is, yeah, I realize I'm not the nicest guy in the world. But my heart is for the people. It really is. This is a better way of saying what I was going to say, where I did say on Numbers 7, the tribes. I love you guys, just whether you know it or not. I love all of you. I do not know why God has me on this journey. Why can't I just get a job, make a good income, be debt-free, buy property, get myself a beautiful woman, travel a lot, go see my grandkids. You know why? Because it ain't about me. That's why.